Hey, what's up everyone, Danny here. In this video, I'm going to show you a $600 gaming PC that I put together using only brand new parts, and once again, I teamed up with Micro Center for this build. But before we get to that though, I wanted to address something. We're going through a really crazy time right now with the coronavirus pandemic, and we've all seen it disrupt various aspects of our lives. I'm actually working from home as a result of it, and Melissa is as well. I'm located in Washington State, which is one of the higher counts of reported cases of the virus, and is actually leading when it comes to deaths caused by it. And I'm having a hard time finding things like toilet paper alongside other grocery items in my local stores due to the mass panic and people hoarding. And I'm sure some of you may be experiencing this as well to varying degrees. I had planned this build before the situation got this bad in the US. But where we are now, the prices and availability may be all over the place in the coming days, weeks, and even months. So I wanted to address that before getting on to the rest of the video. At the very least, I hope that this video brightens up your day since I haven't posted a video in a while. I know I'm really happy to be releasing this video because regardless of the situation, I took a little bit of a break there and it just feels good to be back and making content again. But hopefully we all get through this soon and everything returns back to normal. But yeah, with that said, let's check out the build. Let's go over the parts and their prices. The exact configuration I built came to $600, but as we go over the parts, I'll discuss other options that you can consider, and during the price summary, I'll show you how much those options can bring the total price down. First, let's start with the processor. For this build, I went with the Ryzen 5 2600X. Originally, I was planning on going with the $85 Ryzen 1600AF, which provides a ton of value and is pretty much a budget builder's dream processor. But due to its fantastic price to performance, it was constantly going in and out of stock. Because of that, I ended up going with the 2600X, but I have to say that it's still just as good of a value since Micro Center has them for only $100, and for that additional $15 you're paying, you're getting a better bin chip with higher base and boost clocks out of the box, and it also comes with a raised Spire cooler, which is what we're going to be using in the build. The Spire has a bigger metal block with a copper core compared to the smaller full aluminum raised stealth that comes with the 6800AF, so I think the additional $15 is well spent upgrading to the 2600X. The motherboard I used is the Asus TUF B450M Plus Gaming. This is a micro ATX board that goes for $80 and is priced in line with most of the entry-level B450 boards from other manufacturers. The one thing it does have that makes it stand out from the other boards though is the USB Type-C port in the back. If this is an important feature to you, definitely pick this up over the other ones. I personally use a USB Type-C external hard drive to transfer large files, like all the games from my personal PC to like the benchmarking PC. It really comes in handy for moving large amounts of data like that, like games or like videos for video editing. For memory, I went with a 2x8 set of G.Skill Aegis at 3 GHz. Nothing fancy here, no heat spreaders or anything like that. It's just a nicely priced set of RAM that gets the job done. I forgot to mention earlier, this build is not going to be all flashy and have a bunch of RGB fans and LED strips and all that stuff. It's going to be a very simple, low-key looking build. It's just a lot simpler, and I really do appreciate like the cleaner, simple look. The graphics card in this build is the GTX 1650 Super SC from EVGA. I actually wanted the MSI Ventus one, which goes for the $160 MSRP that the 1650 Super was released at, but it was out of stock, and so were the ones from Gigabyte and Asus, so I went with the EVGA one for $10 more. This card is suited for 1080p gaming. It'll be able to run lighter titles at 1440p, but for the majority of games, especially the AAA titles, 1080p is where you're going to get the best experience. For storage, I'm using an Inland Premium 512GB NVMe SSD for $75. If you find yourself going over budget, you can swap this out for a 2.5-inch SSD of the same capacity, and that'll shave off about $15. Half a terabyte of solid state storage should be enough to get you going. You'll have enough room to get your essential programs on there, and a select number of games. The power supply I'm using is the EVGA 450BR. This is an entry-level power supply that has the standard hardware protections that you would want in a modern-day power supply, and it's more than capable of powering this system. The one thing that I really do like about this power supply, and this seems to be really hard to find in any sub $50 unit, is that it comes with completely black cables. It just makes the build look that much nicer. It was a toss-up for me between this power supply and the Thermaltake Smart 600, which are both at the $50 price point. Eventually, it came down to the black sleeves. I didn't need the 600 watts for the parts that I chose, 450 watts was fine. But if you're using this as a guide and you don't mind ketchup and mustard cables, you could go with the Thermaltake Smart 600 instead and be set for future upgrades that may consume more power. Last but not least, the case. I went with the Lynnwood Landcool 205. This comes in at $90 and it's a bit on the pricier side, but this is a quality case and will definitely last you through various upgrade cycles. There's no RGB on the case, but it does come with a handful of features that I really liked, like the way that they did the tempered glass panel. It doesn't have the typical 4 thumb screws that go through the glass. Instead, there's a metal lip that make it attach like a metal panel does. It's got plenty of cutouts to route cables and a power supply basement that can hide any extra unused cables. The front panel is completely solid, but you do get airflow through 2 strips of perforation on the sides, and included are 120mm fans in the front and rear, which adequately cools the system even with the light overclocking I threw on it. With almost any PC build, the case is completely personal preference. You can follow any build guide out there, and most of the time you can swap in a different case as long as the form factor is compatible. Like I said earlier, there's room to save money in this build if needed. One of my favorite cases is the Cooler Master Q300L, which goes for around $40 and would be a great fit for this build. I didn't use it this time around because I try to make it a point not to use the same case twice for videos if I can help it, because there's just so many out there to choose from and I want to expose myself to building in as many as possible. The Lynnwood Landcool 205 caught my eyes this time around and I was able to fit it within the budget, so I went with it. So now let's look at how everything adds up. The total cost of the build, as I built it, is right at $600 with the Micro Center combo discount. If you don't have access to Micro Center though, you can buy from either NEWEGG or Amazon, and if you did some of the things that I talked about earlier, you can get the price down using some alternative parts, like going with the Ryzen 1600 AF, using a 2.5-inch SSD instead of an NVMe, and going with the cheaper case. Doing this drops the price down to under $550, and you're not going to be sacrificing much on the performance side of things. Building the system was very straightforward and problem-free. I really like the Landcool 205 case. It's very well built and it's super easy to work in. Part of this is also because I had extra room going with a micro ATX board in a mid-sized case. Here it is completed. Let's take a look at some glamour shots. So now let's take a look at some of the performance. For overclocking, I got the 2600X running at 3.9 GHz on all cores, and for the 1650 Super, I've upped the core clock by 150 MHz and the memory clock by 1 GHz. I chose settings for each title that I thought were reasonable for the frames per second I was trying to achieve. Like for the competitive shooters, I went for lower quality, higher frames per second, but for open world adventure games or like single player games that aren't competitive, I was targeting a 60 frames per second experience with better graphics quality. But yeah, sit back, relax, and enjoy the benchmarks. So that's how the system performs. It can pretty much play any game you throw at it. You just have to keep your expectations in line when it comes to the frames per second you're actually trying to achieve. If you're interested in streaming, then this system can also do that, and I'll show you the difference between the performance with and without streaming. I think hands down the most demanding game that I own is Assassin's Creed Odyssey. You know, it's a huge open world game with gorgeous graphics, and it pushes both the CPU and the GPU pretty hard. So I used it to test the streaming capabilities because it has a built-in benchmarking tool that I could replicate, you know, with streaming turned on and off. Without streaming, Assassin's Creed got an average of 64 FPS with a 28 FPS minimum. Now that minimum is not the absolute minimum. I believe that's what Assassin's Creed calls its 0.1% low. When streaming at 720p 60 FPS using X264 medium settings, I got a 54 average and 26.1% low. Switching over to the new NEWEGG encoder, I got a 60 average with a 21.1% low. With either encoder, average FPS took a very minor hit, and the 0.1% difference was not noticeable from a gameplay or stream viewing point of view at all. So the system did really well for streaming a very demanding title, and it should be able to handle any other title thrown in it for streaming. And on that note, that's going to wrap it up for this video. I hope you all enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and just let me know overall how you're doing with this whole pandemic situation going on. I really hope you're all staying safe and healthy, as are your loved ones. We just need to get through this and move on. But there are some pretty fun videos coming up. I have a LAN party story in the queue, as well as another video with UCW on a Dell pre-built style video. So I'm looking forward to getting those out to you as soon as I can. Oh yeah, I want to give a huge thanks to Micro Center again for partnering with me on this video, and I want to thank you all as always for your continued viewership and support of the channel. Stay safe out there, everyone, and I'll see you in the comments as well as in the next video. Bye.